January 7, 1945. The Ardennes forest lies buried under nearly 3 feet of snow. Outside, the war feels frozen in time. Inside a British press tent, however, the air is alive, buzzing with excitement, ego, and something far more dangerous. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery steps forward, straight-backed and confident. Cameras flash. Microphones crowd his face. His sharp, hawk-like features glow under the lights. And then he smiles. It is not the exhausted smile of a man who has survived the bloodiest battle on the Western Front. It is something colder, sharper, an arrogant smirk of a man convinced he is the smartest mind in the room. Montgomery begins to speak. He describes the Battle of the Bulge as one of the most tricky operations he has ever handled. His voice is calm, assured. He repeats one word again and again. I employed the whole available power. I put it into the fight with a bang. To the journalist scribbling frantically, it sounds like the speech of a savior, a hero who stepped in at the darkest hour. But 300 meters away, inside Supreme Allied headquarters, there is no applause. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands silently, holding the transcript of that speech. His hands are trembling, not with fear, but with a rare, controlled fury. For 3 long years, Eisenhower has been the peacemaker. He swallowed insults. He ignored slights. He absorbed Montgomery's arrogance for the sake of the alliance. But today, something breaks. Montgomery believes himself untouchable. He does not realize that, with this speech, he has just signed his own professional death warrant. The pen is already moving. To understand why this press conference was an act of self-destruction, we must rewind to the toxic marriage at the heart of the Allied command. This was never an alliance of friendship. It was built on necessity. On one side stood Eisenhower, Ike, a man of consensus, a political general whose true genius was keeping a fragile coalition from tearing itself apart. To him, war was a team sport. On the other side stood Montgomery, Monty, hero of Alamein, brilliant, methodical, and consumed by a narcissism so deep it stunned those around him. To Monty, war was not a team sport. It was a solo performance, and he was the star. Montgomery openly considered Eisenhower a strategic amateur. A pleasant man, yes, but one who should handle logistics and leave real fighting to real soldiers. For months, tension simmered beneath forced smiles. Monty demanded total command of all ground forces, effectively asking Eisenhower to demote himself. Washington despised Montgomery. Churchill constantly intervened to save him. Yet Eisenhower protected him, believing Monty's tactical skill was worth the headache. That was the deal. But by the winter of 1944, the balance had shifted. The student had become the master, and the master refused to accept it. And then, the snow fell. During the frozen weeks of December 1944, Montgomery lived inside a reality of his own making. From his mobile tactical trailer, surrounded by maps and steaming cups of tea, he saw himself as the only man capable of saving the Western Front. He studied the maps and saw American incompetence everywhere. Omar Bradley's forces spread too thin. Patton's aggression, reckless gambling. In Montgomery's mind, the chaos of the war was not caused by German desperation, but by Eisenhower's broad front strategy. He wrote letters to London claiming the Americans were useless without his guidance. Not out of malice, but from a blinding conviction that he alone was right. He believed himself indispensable. Montgomery assumed the Americans needed him so badly they would tolerate any insult, any demand. He believed Eisenhower was too political, too weak to ever fire him. It was hubris. He forgot one simple truth. Every soldier answers to someone. The crisis erupted on December 16, 1944. German forces smashed through the Ardennes in a massive surprise offensive. The Battle of the Bulge. American lines collapsed under the sudden weight. Communications were severed. Chaos ruled. The German attack drove a wedge so deep it physically split Omar Bradley's headquarters from the 1st and 9th Armies in the north. Eisenhower faced a nightmare. Bradley could no longer command his northern forces. Swallowing his pride, Eisenhower made a purely military decision, one that burned his own generals. He temporarily transferred 200,000 American troops to Montgomery's command. For Bradley, it was humiliation. For Patton, it was near treason. But they obeyed. They expected Montgomery to act as a caretaker, a steward, a professional. Instead, they got a lecture. Montgomery swept into American headquarters like a feudal lord visiting peasants. He refused to meet exhausted officers' eyes. He dismissed their plans, reorganized their defenses, halted counterattacks. "I shall tidy up this mess," he reportedly said. The words burned into American souls. He refused to travel to meet Bradley, forcing Bradley to come to him. When they met, Montgomery lectured him on basic tactics as Bradley sat in furious silence. The atmosphere turned poisonous. American officers openly wondered whether they would rather fight the Germans or the British. Montgomery stabilized the northern front. That much was true. But in doing so, he annihilated what little goodwill remained. He was winning the battle on the map and losing the war in the headquarters. Then, he decided to brag. The press conference of January 7th was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Montgomery stood before the world and presented a version of the Battle of the Bulge that bordered on fiction. He trivialized a battle that cost 19,000 American lives. He barely mentioned Bastogne, ignored Patton's desperate dash from the south. Instead, he painted himself as the savior while Americans crumbled without him. British newspapers devoured it. "Monty saves the Yanks." When the news reached Omar Bradley, he told Eisenhower he would resign rather than serve under Montgomery again. Patton demanded action. The U.S. command structure was in open revolt. They had bled in the snow. And now their sacrifice was being claimed by another man. The illusion of unity shattered. Eisenhower knew compromise was no longer possible. Inside his office, there was no shouting, no rage, just the scratching of a pen. Eisenhower drafted a cable to General George Marshall in Washington. Calm, cold, precise. He detailed the collapse of trust. He explained that the command structure had become unworkable. Then he wrote the ultimatum. If Montgomery was not removed or his attitude fundamentally changed, Eisenhower would resign. It is him or me. This was no bluff. Eisenhower showed the draft to Montgomery's chief of staff, Freddie de Gingand. When he read it, the blood drained from his face. Eisenhower wasn't asking for an apology. He was preparing to fire the most famous general in the British Empire. Gingand raced through a blizzard to Montgomery's headquarters. Monty was cheerful, completely unaware. "Ike is going to fire you," Gingand said bluntly. Montgomery laughed. "He needs me." Gingand shook his head. Even Churchill could not save him now. The smirk vanished. For the first time in the war, Bernard Montgomery was terrified. Montgomery finally understood the truth. He wasn't dealing with a weak politician. He had challenged the most powerful man in the Western world and lost. The next morning, a letter arrived on Eisenhower's desk. It was unconditional surrender. "Dear Ike, I am your very devoted subordinate." Eisenhower did not gloat. He simply placed the firing order into a secret file. The alliance survived, but the friendship died. From that day on, Eisenhower trusted Montgomery no longer. The Americans took the lead. The Rhine-crossing glory went to U.S. forces. The baton passed from Britain to America. Montgomery kept his rank but lost his voice. History remembers tanks and snow. But the most dangerous battle was fought with a pen. And Eisenhower won not through brilliance but through character.